not only did I go to Retro Game Con in early October, but I got other stuff in October. So welcome to October in Review. We ended September in Review with 2 unboxings of limited run games. So why don't we start October in Review with a completely separate unboxing? If you've seen this channel before, you might have an idea what it is. You probably have no idea. That's okay. Let's talk about it while I open. So, Heroescape was a board game originally released by Hasbro in 2004, and I have really good memories with Heroescape. So I had a friend whose older brother had the Heroescape sets, and I remember going to his house all the time and playing that along with other games. Same friend that introduced me to Dokapon Kingdom, so that's the guy. And yeah, it's basically a terrain building game where you build your own war zone, your own map kind of, and you choose your own cast of characters to battle with, and it's pretty cool. I think I might have in the past mentioned it or kind of called it like what's D&D? Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, it took me a second. I never played it. To my knowledge, it's kind of like a D&D, but physical instead of just talking it out. That's just what it was described to me at some point, so I don't know. We'll go with that. But it was revived last year by Renegade Games, and they put out Wave 1. I think I showed that off in summer in review, I think. And that was Wave 1, and now just today, as of recording, I got Wave 2. And not only did I get Wave 2, but I found out like yesterday morning that Waves 3 and 4 were announced, so I ordered those too, and I spent a lot of money on those. But yeah, here's Wave 2. So just very quickly showing off the stuff that I see. Basically, there's a main set that was in Wave 1. I got that main set, so everything here is kind of like expansion-based. So what's the first thing I pulled out? An army expansion. What is this? Revna's Rebuke, Iron Lick Viscerat, and Necrotech Wraith Riders. Ah, yes. Heroescape has some of the most interesting names ever. Here's one army expansion. What else is in here? We got a terrain expansion. A terrain system, I should say. Sorry. Lands of Valhalla. Not Valhalla. Valhalla. That's very big for just terrain. What else is in here? We got another terrain system. Waters of Valhalla. Wait, hold on. Interesting. That one says Lands of Valhalla without an L in the beginning. This one says Waters of Valhalla. I don't know if they noticed that, but okay, I don't know why we couldn't get these terrains all together, but money. So there's that. And then one more piece to Wave 2. What is this? Revna's Rebuke, Kyrie Warriors, another army expansion. So again, yeah, you couldn't necessarily play the game with just the expansions. You would need the base set. But at least here you have 2 army expansions and some terrain to work with, so you could probably make it work. It would probably just become redundant playing with the same characters over and over again. And I think there's some other stuff in here. What else we got? Oh, naturally, what else? We need a Renegade Games pin and sticker. Cool. Alrighty, nice. Cool. So that's Heroescape. Just wanted to show off the few expansions I got here in Wave 2. But now let's actually get into some video games. So one thing I mentioned at some point is that I don't really want to keep adding games to my like Nihon no Konyo Henshokai list. Anytime I buy Japanese games, I would throw it on this spreadsheet to talk about it at a later time. And I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to start if I buy a Japanese game, I'm going to just show it off in like months in review, just so I don't keep building that list over and over again. So there's some Japanese games here. Some Japanese games I've got in the past, not even October. So not only is it like a partially Nihon no Konyo Henshokai episode, but also like could have been in episodes a long time ago. So kind of just a jumble of things I decided to talk about along with stuff I actually got in October, which is most of the things. So first thing we're going to talk about is something very, very super weird that I did not know existed until like within the last 2 weeks. That would be the Nintendo Power Super Famicom memory cassette. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about here. This was released in Japan in 1997 as basically an official rewritable flash cartridge. You would buy this cartridge, this box and the cartridge on the inside, which the cartridge is white as opposed to the Super Famicom's normal gray cartridge. So you would buy the cartridge at a participating retailer. Sorry, I can't redo this episode because I already opened the damn thing. But here we go. You would buy the cartridge at a participating retailer, and you could go back to that retailer or any other participating retailer with the intention of downloading games to the cartridge. So that's super interesting. The cartridge was made for Super Famicom, but 3 years into the service, they added Game Boy support. So in the year 2000, there was also a Game Boy memory cartridge, but honestly, I was researching pretty fast. But I think I gathered that you can actually play Game Boy games on the Super Famicom via this cartridge, not only just like a Super Game Boy, which was a peripheral for the Super Nintendo and Super Famicom. So I gather that you could also put Game Boy games onto this cartridge, but I could be wrong. The sources weren't really super clear about that part. But anyway, the games available for download were super recognizable. So pretty much every first-party Nintendo game was available. So your Donkey Kong Countries or Super Donkey Kong, F-Zero is on there. Other like Mario All-Stars, Mario Kart, anything that was released on Super Famicom by Nintendo was available to be downloaded, along with other games that were never released physically. So, for example, there was a line of Picross games, which they're basically puzzle games, a line of Picross games that were never physically released, but very interestingly, some of them are kind of like lost to time. So there was even like a Pokemon-themed Picross volume that was released via this service that I don't think was ever re-released, so it's kind of lost to time. I'm sure it's saved somewhere, but yeah, very interesting that, you could buy this card and just download new games. It was meant to extend the Super Famicom's lifetime, so released in 1997, this is already after the Nintendo 64 was released, so Nintendo was just trying to keep the Super Famicom alive, being able to download games for cheaper than what it would have cost you to buy them physically or buy them brand new. So that's a great idea in theory, but there's a great, fantastic video that I'm going to link in the description that Did You Know Gaming did, where they talked all about this and why it failed miserably. Like I said, it's a great idea in theory just to make these games available again, but it failed because, again, we're in like the N64 lifetime, and the places where you would download these games, the employees weren't properly trained. These weren't like Nintendo stores. They were just like regular places you could go to get these games downloaded, and if the employees weren't properly trained, you wouldn't have been able to do it. So that's kind of weird, kind of a sad failure, because it's really, really neat. But yeah, very, very interesting. So it was originally released in 97, Game Boy support began in 2000, and then it was completely discontinued in 2007. So that's a very quick rundown of Nintendo Power memory. So like I said, I'm going to link the Did You Know Gaming video because it is so thorough, so fantastic. So please go check out that video because it is amazing. So yeah, first really cool thing I got here in October. Also, I hear the rustling of the HeroScape packaging, so I gotta put this back into its box. Video making at its finest. Okay, moving on from the Super Famicom, we skip over the N64 era to get to the GameCube. And this is Metroid Prime, specifically with the Metroid Prime 2 Echoes bonus disc. This is interesting. So I don't really need to give Metroid Prime a huge introduction. It's one of like the most renowned greatest games of all time. It took the Metroid formula from the NES and the Super Nintendo, not only turned it 3D, but turned it into a first-person shooter, and this game sold like hotcakes, which is fantastic. Metroid Prime sold like hotcakes, but I got this really cool variant here in October. So it's the last version for, sorry, I gotta figure this out, how to word this. It's the last GameCube version released for Metroid Prime, but not the last time it was released. So let's go over all the different releases. Metroid Prime was originally released in America first, which is pretty unique for a Nintendo series. Originally released in America in November 2002, Then it went to Korea at some point, and then it finally got to Japan in February 2003. So late 2002 in America, even later 2002 for Korea, and then it finally got to Japan, which is weird that it took so long to get over there, but that was February 2003. But this bonus disc version was released all the way in 2004. I couldn't get an exact month, but released in 2004 after the Japanese version came out. So it's the last version to be released on GameCube in any region, but it was also only released here in North America, this specific variant. So Echoes, Metroid Prime 2, would be released in America in November 2004. So this variant must have been released like early 2004 to get people hyped for Metroid Prime 2. And then Echoes would end up going to Japan a few months later in 2005, but kind of like Metroid Prime 1, Europe got it first. So not necessarily Korea getting it first, but Europe got it almost immediately. So it's weird that Japan had to wait so long to get Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2, but yeah, definitely kind of a weird release history. But it kind of corrects itself because both Metroid Prime 1 and 2 were brought to the Wii in 2009. It was first released in Japan using the new Play control line, so you're not using a GameCube controller anymore. You could use like motion controls. You could use a Wii remote to play Metroid Prime 1 and 2 on the Wii, and that was only in Japan. We never got those new Play control versions separately, but we did get the Metroid Prime trilogy this time after the Japanese releases. So kind of interesting. We still got the games just in a trilogy and not separately. Kind of strange. And then, just kind of finishing up talking about Metroid Prime. There was a Switch remaster in 2023, so just last year. But we're still waiting on Metroid Prime 2, that remaster on Switch. And we're also waiting on Metroid Prime 4, which was announced like a long time ago, and we still haven't got, even though Nintendo like just threw up the graphic in like a Nintendo Direct not that long ago. So I don't know, man. We're getting Metroid Prime 4 at some point, but and then just for continuity, Metroid Prime 3 was also released on the Wii, but we don't talk about that one. So yeah, weird variant. Cool, Metroid Prime with a bonus disc. Next up is 2DS games. I will show them in tandem, but they are the Japanese versions of Game & Watch Collection 1 and 2. So let's talk about Game & Watch. So the original Game & Watches were handheld LCD games that were initially started in the year 1980. So way back in early Nintendo video game days. So they were famously known as the precursor to the ultra successful Game Boy. So the line started in 1980, and they were sets of just single LCD games. So not just one game would release; it would be like a whole line of them, and that kind of helped lead the way to the Game Boy because they were just handheld games. So the games weren't super deep; they were basically just high score games. But they were great toys to keep people like entertained on like commutes to work. And I think the story goes that the designer of the Game & Watch and the designer of the Game Boy, Gunpei Yokoi, kind of saw people like playing with a calculator and was like, they can play with a video game instead. So that's how the Game & Watch was created. And then the Game Boy came along after that. And then the Game & Watch handhelds quickly fizzled out as soon as the Game Boy came out because way easier to support the Game Boy than the single Game & Watch handhelds, but a lot of the Game & Watch handhelds now are like super expensive. We did get them here in North America, not as many, but yeah, still kind of weird. So these games were only released sorry, hold on. These games were only released exclusively through Club Nintendo. So if you're not familiar with Club Nintendo, it was basically in this era of Nintendo, like DS and Wii era, you buy games, they would have codes on the inside saying like redeem your Club Nintendo points. So you would load them into your account on Club Nintendo, and then you could redeem those points for merchandise and prizes and rewards and stuff like that. And two of those rewards were Game & Watch collections. They're also not the first time we've gotten Game & Watch collections. Like they're literally just collections of those original Game & Watch games just modernized. But we did also get a whole bunch of them on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. I think there was 5 of them, including like one PAL exclusive. But those were like 10 years ago. They were released like 10 years before that these came out. So it was a similarly updated way, but you're about to see in just a second, these were not efficient ways to play those games. So Game & Watch Collection 1 was originally released in Japan in September 2008, and it took about a year and a half to come to North America in March 2010. I don't know why, though. These games are super, super simple. It might have just been like a logistical thing with like Club Nintendo. But it contained... oh, sorry, I got the dates wrong. This one was released in July 2006 and took over 2 years to get to America. But this one contained 3 Japanese exclusive Game & Watch games. And specifically, there was a specific line of Game & Watch games that were multi-screen. So most Game & Watches were just kind of like one single LCD screen that kind of looks like a Game Boy Advance almost. But there was a line of them that were multi-screen, so kind of would open and close like a DS. So naturally, some of those games were brought to the Game & Watch collection. Those 3 games were Donkey Kong, based on the classic arcade game, Greenhouse, which was kind of like a tower defense, where you spray away bugs from eating your flowers in a, you guessed it, a greenhouse. And the last one was Oil Panic, which your goal was to catch dripping oil and deposit it elsewhere. So those are 3 very, very simple Game & Watch games that, I mean, were modernized enough to be put on DS, but like not so much that you could only fit 3 of them on a DS cartridge. So that's a little weird, a little underwhelming. But yeah, kind of weird. And then they managed to somehow do even worse with the Game & Watch Collection 2. So this one was the one released in September 2008 and took a year and a half to get to North America. My apologies. But the 2 games that were included on this one were not even multi-screen games. And going back to what I just said, there was only 2 of them. Game & Watch Collection 1 had 3 games, and this one only had 2. So that's really weird. One of them is Parachute, where you collect parachuters that are falling from a helicopter. It almost reminds me a lot of like an iPod Nano game. And Octopus, where you are literally a diver avoiding an octopus. So shocker there. But yeah, those 2 games weren't multi-screen games. They were just single-screen ones where Parachute might be on like the top screen and Octopus would be on the bottom, and you just chose which one to play. So yeah, definitely not the most efficient purchases ever. I mean, they're cool. They're very neat, very cool piece of Nintendo history, but like very underwhelming for what you were actually getting, especially considering that along with Nintendo's Hanafuda cards, these were like the most expensive prizes on Club Nintendo. So that's a little crazy. Like I said, they were nothing more than like novelties, because the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games had more Game & Watch games, and you probably were not paying as much or not as difficult to get as these 2 DS ones. But at the very least, it's cool because my Game & Watch Collection 2 is sealed. So that's neat, I guess, but yeah, definitely very weird. After the Game & Watch collections on Game Boy and Game Boy Color, and after the ones on DS, in 2020, 35th anniversary of Mario, was that already 2020? Nintendo put out 2 more Game & Watches, a little more powerful Game & Watches, a little more useful here in 2024, where they were the games like the actual Super Mario Bros. Game. There was, I think, what I'm trying to say is that there were 2 re-releases of Game & Watches, not like original Game & Watches that were released in like the 80s, but just Game & Watches that were shaped like Game & Watches but had more functionality, like a clock, like actually having the real Super Mario Bros. On the Game & Watch. Obviously, technology is way more powerful now than it was in the 80s, so they were able to do that. There's one for Super Mario Bros., and there's also one for Legend of Zelda that was released for the 35th anniversary. I have both of those, so kind of cool, kind of weird. But yeah, weird piece of Club Nintendo history. So, very last 2 games I'm going to show off are definitely, I think, the most interesting. And definitely at least the last one to me. But if you've seen this channel, you know I love my Ape Escape games. And the last 2 games we're going to talk about are indeed Ape Escape games. It's been a while since we've talked about them, so this is overdue. The first game I'm going to show is Saru Itoi Usawagi Waki Waki Game Tenkomori, specifically with 2 exclamation points. Very important here. Or better known as Itoi Monkey Mania. So the Itoi, this little peripheral right here, was a peripheral for the PlayStation 2 that you plugged it in and it tracked your movement. So you weren't playing with a PS2 controller, you were just tracking your movement with a camera. Kind of like Xbox Kinect before Xbox Kinect, kind of. And there were several games released in this line. This specific one was never released in North America. It was released in Europe, but never North America. So it's a party game, unsurprisingly. It's a party game, basically like a Mario Party clone in the Ape Escape universe, I guess if you want to call it that. But it was surprisingly first released in China in August 2004, and then was released in Japan a day later in August 2004. I don't know. I think that's kind of funny. It would release in Korea in November 2004, so just a few months after, and then finally in Europe in March 2005. So about 9 months, 6? Do I know how to count? 7 months in between initial Chinese launch and a European launch, but it never came to North America. We did get EyeToy, we just didn't get this game. But it's interesting because there's a couple different versions of this game that was released. So there was the original game with the EyeToy, this one. There was a standalone game, which just didn't have the EyeToy, so if you already had an EyeToy, you didn't need to get another one. There was a game with a silver EyeToy, so most EyeToys were black, but there was a bundle that had a silver EyeToy. That one was only in Europe, and yeah, those were like the three main releases, or main bundles, if you will. I have a copy of the standalone game. I have a copy of the game that would have came in here that at some point was just separated from its bundle. And I didn't know this one existed until I was like really digging deep into the different releases of Ape Escape games, and I was like, oh, I got to get that bundle. It's Ape Escape. So finally ended up getting it, and now I have the bundle along with 2 other versions of the game. Not even 2 other versions, 2 other copies of the game, but again, one is the standalone, one is the bundle game, just loose. So I don't know. Now I have this. But definitely the game I am most excited to talk about, which I wish I have talked about sooner, is the Saru Get You 2 Uki Uki disc. Hear me out. So Saru Get You 2 was released in Japan in July of 2002, and that would end up becoming Ape Escape 2 in North America a year later in June 2003. So you know I love my Ape Escape 2, and this is really, really cool. So the original Japanese version of Ape Escape 2 had 297 monkeys available for you to catch, but the American version had a full 300 monkeys available to catch at launch. So where did these extra 3 monkeys come from? Okay, at some point from the initial game's release in Japan, this physical DLC disc came out, and then it was originally just loaded into the game for the North American release. So original release, at some point between original release and North American release, we got this one that included those 3 monkeys. But it didn't only just include those 3 monkeys. It also included the Saru Buster, which is just an easier way to catch monkeys. So it's kind of interesting. It kind of looks like the water catcher, if you ever played Ape Escape 2, just a land version of it, which is kind of neat. But yeah, it's super interesting that, you know, it's kind of like a DLC disc. Like, it's a physical DLC disc, and it's not like DLC today where, you know, you just order the DLC and it loads onto your system. This DLC was a whole disc. Like, you had to put it into your system and save it to your memory card and then play Ape Escape 2 again. So, you know, definitely that's like on par for the era. That's just how these things kind of worked. But yeah, super, super interesting that it was the Ape Escape 2 that we got is basically the original game plus a DLC disc that nobody will ever talk about, ever. So definitely very, very interesting piece of Ape Escape 2 history, Ape Escape history in general. And once I found out about this, I'm like, I have to get this. And it was expensive for 3 monkeys and a weapon. And speaking of that weapon, no, I shouldn't say weapon, that gadget was never released in North America. So even though we got the 3 extra monkeys, we never got the added gadget. So also kind of weird thing for Ape Escape. I don't know. But I'm really, really happy to get that. So with that said, that's everything. Huge thank you to Nintendo fandom, especially with like the Metroid Prime, the Nintendo Power Super Famicom cassette, the Game & Watch collections, all super helpful. Thanks so much to GameFAQs, always for like cross-referencing release dates, and especially for the Uki Uki disc. Thank you so much to the Cutting Room Floor for kind of condensing all that information for me. So that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I hopefully taught you something, but if there's anything I missed about any of these games, please let me know, because I would love to continue learning about these games as much as I have hopefully taught you something. But with that said, bye!